As you know, the world is slowly getting out of the grip of the dreaded pandemic, but for reasons unknown, we in Kerala are still struggling to get a foothold with the numbers going against us every day. We are indeed going through tough times. Let us begin the session with a minute's silence and pray to Almighty that we all remain safe and healthy and all of us overcome the challenging times, and also especially to say a word of prayer for all those who have suffered and still suffering during these trying times. Continue to be seated wherever you are and close your eyes for a minute. Thank you and good evening once again to our guest of the evening, Mr. Samir Vakil, co-founder and Chief Executive Officer of Global Linger, past President and Program Committee Chair, Mr. S.R. Nair, past President, Mr. A.K. Nair, Senior Vice President, Nirmala Lilly, Joint Secretary, Mr. Algiers Khalid, other Managing Committee members, members of KMA and other LMAs, student members and invited guests. I'm sure this attendance will swell even further as we progress. The response to the invitation to the event itself was a clear indication that we have a very relevant topic for the day with a prolific speaker to address us. Well, this is how KMA has been pulling on in these troubled times to keep our members engaged, remain positive, and provide with meaningful deliberations and events of utility. Well, as I had said earlier, situation around us is still gloomy, though we are getting signs of hope in the horizon as many parts of our country are slowly restoring kind of normalcy. The good news is that we have a steady decline in the number of new cases, though the test positivity rate is still well above 10 for Kerala. Let us continue to remain vigilant and follow all the protocols aimed at avoiding the chance of getting infected and thus not adding to the TPR. In spite of all the troubles and turmoil of the pandemic, KMA has been continuously bringing to you very many events of purpose on a very regular basis. StartCon discussion series presenting successful startup companies, very meaningful and focused Women Managers Forum activities at least once a month, enriching sessions exclusively for the MSMEs, and management education programs. We were trying to serve suiting everyone's palate. We even conducted a week-long Management Week celebrations during February, a Management Students Convention with over 800 B School students participating online, 2 memorial lectures with exceptional speakers, organized even a virtual run, the KMA Run, with nearly 1,000 participants from across the country, propagating our theme of the year, responsible management, and also conducted one digital summit in hybrid format. In addition to this, we have started a series of workshops for the MSME sector with an opening meet that was inaugurated by the State Industries Minister, Mr. P. Rajiv himself, and continuing with specific workshops enlightening the participants on various schemes, benefits and offers available with central, state and banking institutions. The next workshop on central government schemes is in fact planned for tomorrow evening, where we will have the State Industries Principal Secretary, Mr. Mohammad Hanish, and Joint Director from the Ministry of MSME, Government of India, Mr. G.S. Prakash, addressing the delegates from the MSME sector. Well, coming to today's Leader Talk session, our program committee headed by past President and Chairman Mr. S.R. Nair and our team have been conceiving regular programs under the banner KMA Leader Talks. We have presented a multitude of programs all these months, and this month we have already had one startup conversation, a masterclass on artificial intelligence, and 3 more events are lined up this week, including this one. This is the 16th of the Leader Talks lecture series that we are having in this KMA year. All these sessions were carefully selected with renowned speakers from the industry and academia, sharing their domain knowledge and their invaluable experience with our audience. Speakers were from diverse sectors and topics were topical and timely. And today we have another session with great contemporary relevance and interest. SMEs are mostly in India the micro, small and medium enterprises, MSME, sector has been recognized as the engine of growth all over the world. Indian MSMEs are recognized as a major contributor in the economic growth and said to be the backbone of the Indian economy. In the past, it has provided resilience to ward off global economic shocks and adversities. Kerala has the 12th largest number of MSMEs in India, generating employment for approximately 45 lakhs people. Many countries in the world have established some kind of SME development agency as a nodal agency to coordinate and oversee all government interventions in the respect of development of the sector. In the case of India too, medium establishments has for the first time been defined in terms of a separate act governing promotion and development of micro, small and medium enterprises, that is MSME Development Act 2006. Indian MSMEs manufacture more than 8,000 products. This encompasses a wide range from the traditional products to sophisticated products in terms of high-tech items. However, in spite of all the so-called support measures from various institutions and with very good prospects worldwide, the Indian MSMEs have been subject to many constraints and most of them not really getting the wind beneath their wings. They in general lack up-to-date information on various critical factors and are often unaware about the latest technologies present in the global market. Sometimes they lack managerial skills, entrepreneurial knowledge, and technology-intensive education to run a competent MSME. Today we have an SME of SMEs. I mean, a subject matter expert of small medium businesses to address us and enlighten on some of his findings and learnings of how Indian SMEs can in fact propel India to become a global manufacturing hub. On behalf of the Managing Committee at KMA and all present here, I formally welcome you, Mr. Samir Vakil, to this session of KMA Leader Talks. Mr. Vakil is the co-founder. Your audio was not coming. If you said thank you, we couldn't hear that. I hope it is fine.
No,
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, Mr. Vakil is a co-founder and CEO of Global Linger, an organization engaged in helping SMEs get connected to the digital world and reap huge success by getting them connected well to a global ecosystem. I also extend my hearty welcome to all the past presidents of KMA present here, members of the Managing Committee and Executive Committee, Senior Vice President, Joint Secretary, members of KMA and other LMAs, members of other organizations who have come as guests, student members, members of the media, and all invited guests to this session, which is about to begin. We have our Joint Secretary, Mr. Khalid, who is a very close friend of Mr. Samir Vakil, who in fact introduced him to KMA. We'll say a few words to introduce him, but let me also tell you that we will be having our program committee chair and Mr. SR Nair to take the session through to the Q&A itself. For those who still do not know SR well, he's a senior past president of KMA and is a renowned corporate mentor, business coach, author, blogger, and thinker who turned his focus to academia after a successful stint as an IT entrepreneur for many years. Now let's hear a few words from Algiers before I hand it over to SR. Algiers? You have to unmute yourself, Algiers.
Yes,
President and Madhav Chandran and members of past presidents and members of KMA. It's my pleasure to introduce a very good old friend of mine since mid-80s when we joined the same batch as management trainee. Thereafter, we had opportunity to work together in the same office during our early stages of career. His profile has been shared to all, but sticking to protocol, it's my pleasure to introduce him today. Samir Vakil is a co-founder and chief executive officer of Global Linker, which today has connected 350,000 SMEs in 149 countries. He is based in Mumbai and leads strategy and business function of Global Linker. Prior to founding Global Linker, Samir was managing director at Citibank in New York and was leading a global effort across multiple countries in creating a next generation digital banking experience. Earlier, he was president of the Citi Cards Japan based in Tokyo and was one of the 4 regional directors for Citi's global card business. Thereafter, Samir was country manager South Asia for MasterCard. He was also the founding CEO of the joint venture between GE Capital and State Bank of India, which managed all the business process of the SBI card business in India. Earlier, he was with SBI, HSBC India, heading sales and marketing for their credit card business, and later heading Western India Personal Banking Division of HSBC. Samir's career has been marked by a number of strategic partnerships he has established over the years. He is a strong believer in creating models that harness the combined power of multiple organizations in solving for large challenges and opportunities. He is very passionate about the cause of small businesses, and Global Linker is a strong reflection of everything he believes in and practices. Samir did his master's in management studies from Mumbai University and enjoys creative pursuit in his leisure time. Over to you, President.
Thank you, Algiers, for introducing your good friend, Mr. Samir Vakil. Now it's time to hand it over to our program committee chair and past president, Mr. S.R. Nair, to take on the proceedings. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vakil. Welcome. Good evening to all of you. Mr. Vakil has a presentation to do, so we will hear him first, and then you can have your questions on the chat mode. I will introduce you by recognizing you, and then we will take it along after that. So let us now first listen to Mr. Samir Vakil. Sir, all yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here today. It's an absolute pleasure. And to everyone gathered over here, like was said, I think we hope for better times, and we should be able to do this in person soon. It would be my pleasure to come down to my favorite state and my favorite city as well. So it'll be wonderful to do that. Today, we're going to talk about how Indian SMEs are capable completely and will in due course make India a manufacturing hub. And this is in the context of a lot that is spoken about in terms of the services sector in India. Earlier, of course, the agrarian economy was extremely important for India, but somehow the manufacturing sector has not had the spotlight that it actually deserves. And a lot of that is to do with what we have collectively probably got as an agenda going forwards from here. There is a little mention about Global Linker that was done, which is the solution that I come from, and what we've created over there is a solution to harness the power of small and medium enterprises. And everything I will talk about is based on my own experience of being an observer of both the macroeconomic situation as well as industry in general, having interacted with businesses all over in various countries and small and medium enterprises in particular, and based on what we are seeing at Global Linker, where we cater to the wider spectrum. And as Algiers correctly said, there are over 350,000 SMEs from over 149 countries. In India, they are from over 7,000 cities, towns and cities in the country. So thank you again for having me over. I'll move on to the subject. To try and introduce this, I wanted to put the discussion in perspective. Firstly, I said earlier as well that India has always been a manufacturing hub. There are a lot of products that have come out of India. And, if we just were to trace back into history, some of us may remember, I have to admit this predates me, but in 1949, API, which was one of the companies that was established in India, actually started initially importing parts of scooters and making those, and soon went on to make their own as well. Many of us may remember even the HMT, what used to be Hindustan Machine and Tools, and as a company went on to create watches for consumers. And quite aptly, the first model was called Janta, which is really for the larger population of the country, and was an economic model, but an elegant one at that. Many of us might remember in our homes having used a Sumit Mixie. And that was a time when if you needed a mixer grinder, you had to bring one from overseas and use either a Braun or something like that. And then it wouldn't cater to the Indian markets. And therefore, a lot of Indianization had to be done. And Sumit became a household name at that point in time. We also saw, the special car that came into India in 1983, which was at that time, as a reminder to many of us, priced at 43,000 rupees. So it was keeping a low cost model in mind, keeping a mass affordability in mind, as well as trying to build scale. Very relevant even in today's times. So these are just some reminders from the past to talk about how India had always valued manufacturing, and it was a base. Of course, with greater scales required. Now, today's subject is very, very large. We could look at it from various lenses. We could talk about various facets of this, but given all the limitations we would have on time and everything else, we could look at the macro considerations that affect or can have an impact on India and its manufacturing ambitions and prowess. On the other side, we could also look at more micro considerations. What does this mean for people like us if we are in the manufacturing business or are considering being in that or have been in that but want to start with a fresh agenda? What does it mean to us? And that's where we will spend more of our time today, on the focus of what each of us could individually do in our businesses to be able to help India be that global manufacturing hub, which undoubtedly it will be. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that it will be. It's a question of how long we take to get there, and can we get there sooner as well as in better shape. But more importantly, what does it mean to each of us, and how can we gain from all the tailwind that's being created around India being a global manufacturing hub. Moving on the macro considerations, I think we've got everything going for us, both in terms of global forces as well as national forces. Recounting a couple of them, and this is not an exhaustive list, this is purely illustrative to make a point. In 2011, DIPP did announce the National Manufacturing Policy, and the whole goal or aim of this was to say, how can India, which today sees about 16% of its GDP coming from manufacturing, how do we move that to 25% and beyond? How can we create over 100 million jobs that are required with the skills development effort that is required? Now, this is a huge agenda for India. All of us talks about the rich dividends that are going to come from the youth population of this country. But equally, I think it's our collective responsibility to create jobs for them as well. And manufacturing as a sector needs to start getting its prominence once again from where it used to be. A lot of college children coming out of graduation today tend to look at careers in a certain way. I think that reorientation is required, and we can collectively start to do that. We'll talk more about that as well. Also, there is the creation of the National Investment Manufacturing Zones, and we'll start seeing that happen and proliferation. One of the aims of this program was also development of SMEs. So that's always been a spotlight and a focus, and will continue to be. Important now to start looking at green manufacturing, and I think this will apply to all of us and our businesses, even when we go to raise finance or capital requirements that we may have. I think increasingly having eco-friendly manufacturing, keeping the environment in mind, will become extremely important. And overall, there is a whole need for the rationalization and simplification of business regulations, which really talks about how we can make ease of business. Now, along with that, there are some macro, even higher program tailwinds that all of us should really be enjoying looking at and saying, this can propel us further. I think the Make in India clarion call that was provided, even in the first term of the current government, I think was very, very symbolic. And even the line that was created, it was very clear that it was very strongly leaning towards the manufacturing sector and how we can put our gears together to move forward. The more recent call, especially during COVID, of creating a very independent India is also going in that direction, not just independent for ourselves in terms of self-dependence, but also to look outwards. India as a manufacturing base, the world as a market. And, I can tell you that's absolutely the kind of mindset all of us will need to come into, and we'll talk more about that. COVID has presented, it's in fact completely changed the center of gravity of this earth, I have to say. And in that, India seems to have come right in the center of that whole piece. The world's eyes are on India, and it's really our opportunity to take advantage or to let it pass at this point in time. I think it's just in the midst of everything that's been said about COVID, if there was a silver lining, I think the silver lining is very much shining on India. We have the opportunity. And then that has, in some years, it's been going on, but it's brought it to the fore, is MITI-V. which is the Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, India, and Vietnam. These are the 5 countries where the spotlight is, where we can see a lot of manufacturing activity going to pick up from here onwards. Carrying on with some of the government initiatives, what we've tried to do at a broad level is to make India more business friendly, and clearly our rank in terms of manufactured value addition is 430 billion. It's about close to 16% of India's GDP, but then we'll always have to have our eyes and sights kept higher. If we were to look at China, ranked at number 2 on that, they're about 1,000 times bigger at 4 trillion roughly, and for them it's about close to 29% of GDP. So that's really a benchmark in a sense of where we need to go and beyond. In terms of ease of doing business, we've clearly improved the situation with India, moving on to 63 rank in 2019 from 142. It is said that India will have to be within the 50s and maybe in the early part of that to really give the kind of push we deserve. But at least we are heading in the right direction. But then when we look at it in relative terms, our other competitors, if I can call them at a nation level, are also sort of moving forward in their own ways. And China moved from rank 90 to 31 in the similar period. We did talk about the focus being more on micro consideration, and I think this is very, very important. But here are a couple of pointers that I would have for micro corporations and organizations as we start looking at what those considerations should be. If we actually want to make India a manufacturing hub, a global manufacturing hub, and as a result, each of our individual units have to be world class, it would be extremely important for us to think scale and think global. Now, I'm going to illustrate this with an unrelated example because this is non-manufacturing and I'm talking about myself and Global Linker. We're a self-funded startup. And despite being a self-funded startup, if you ask me, my co-founders, our leadership team, and maybe the rest of the organization, we are all very clear. By the year 2030, we see ourselves as being one of the most valued companies globally. So we have a clear task, we have a clear path, we have a clear date set for ourselves by 2030, which really means it could be before as well. But by then we want to be in one of the most valued companies, and we know to do that what we require to do. But clearly, if you were to apply that as a thought, it doesn't matter what your current size is. It doesn't matter what your capital structure is, what your inheritances are or aren't. If your thinking can be along the lines of scale, if they can be global, you're not restricted wherever in the country you may be based, whatever size of town, etc. I think in an earlier industry I was associated, which was the BPO industry, there was a wonderful saying that went around which said, geography is history. It is no more about geography, where you are based, what language you speak, etc. It's really your own mindset that you can pick. The second thing, if you really want to build scale and you want to go global, then it's very clear you can't be in a sunset industry. You have to look for a sunrise industry, or you have to look for the rays of sunrise that are coming from even a relatively slower industry. Pick that and look at it forward and say what is going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 20 years and beyond. Don't be restricted doing things yourself. Be very unshy of looking forward and backward for integration opportunities. If you do not have integration opportunities, look for collaboration opportunities. Everyone need not do everything. But if you can find collaboration partners, because you will be able to run as fast as your raw material supply comes to you. Your ability to move into finished products is going to depend on what kind of packaging solutions you are getting and you have access to. So in every direction, backward and forward, continue to look very, very hard and say, if this is my growth ambition, am I surrounded by partners who have shared ambitions like me, or am I going to be held slow because of other people around me, and therefore should I broad base my support structure around me? Get into product development. A lot of manufacturers have looked at job works, have looked at manufacturing on a contract basis, etc. That does not stop you from having a product development mindset. Because if you can think of organizations you are producing for, they have not tasked you a production job alone. You have become a business partner to them, just the way we were talking about forward and backward integration. You are somebody's forward or backward integration partner, and you don't stop thinking. You have to have a product development mindset, even if you don't own the brand yourself. Very, very strong research and development focus. Now, this is not just laboratory stuff, but this is really keeping a ear to the ground, trying to find which way things are going, and keeping that always to say that the world does not stand still. In today's day and age, if you are running on a treadmill, you're probably keeping, a track with the rest of the folks, which means you're standing still. You've got to run even faster. And the best way to do that is to keep one eye always looking forward to saying what trends are coming my way. What do I need to do to adapt to that and be able to take advantage of that? Extremely important. Increased automation, skilling and reskilling. Very important again, because if we don't do that, we could become obsolete before we know it. Because to move forward, you really need to stay ahead, not just of yourself, but also of others who are looking at the same space and of events that are going to come in the future. So very important to do that. And all of these apply whether you're building for yourself or you're into contract manufacturing, it doesn't really matter. Again, we've got a lot of tailwind to us. It's for us to take advantage of these tailwinds. In today's day and age, I can say even the day we began our own operations, our data center was in the same kind of infrastructure that any of the Fortune 100 companies had. And we weren't paying by the millions, right? Because of pay-for-use services, because of free services, we also live in a very exciting digital world. And digitization sits really in our heads. It does not sit on our devices or otherwise. I will take an example of one business which I consider extremely high-tech, 100% digitized, and it is almost predominantly led by people who may not have gone to graduation. Many of them may not have even completed school. And I'm talking about the radio taxi service, the Ubers, the Olas, and other such vehicle companies. Those drivers are independent entrepreneurs running a fully digitized business, right from accepting a ride, finding out the location of where they have to go, traveling to the point of destination which they may not have ever been to, being able to recover the monies, being able to rate the customer, to be able to get a rating from the customer, everything is digitized. Then how is it that this segment of people that we would normally classify as less educated are able to run a 100% digitized business? Because the complexity lies behind the curtain, and that's the beauty of digitization today. You don't need to be a technologist to be running a digital business today, and that's the beauty of it. The more we are able to accept that, and we are able to take digitization into our stride, the better we will be equipped, because that will form the strong foundation on which we will be able to build the tall building of our dreams, all the hopes that we have for our business. That is either going to be limited or going to be available to us based on how strong a foundation we build. And this foundation is not about the traditional manufacturing or production oriented foundation. You need to take all aspects, and digitization is one of those. Greater access to capital, no more a constraint. You don't have to be from a certain kind of a family or a certain heritage or lineage to be able to make it big today. So I think those are ideas we have to come out of our mind to say, if I'm getting into manufacturing, that to world-class scale, and I'm going to be a global major, I need to be extremely well-funded, not when you begin necessarily. But if you do the right things, I think capital will find its way to you very often, more often than not. Collaboration and community, we talked about this, you're not alone. This is a day and age where you can open up conversations, talk to people. The more, and I say this especially because our business is about that. In today's day and age in business, your net worth is your network. So the more people you are connected to, the more people you are talking to, the more people you are conversing with, hearing different perspectives, that is how much you will probably be able to grow your business. And it's your network, which is your net worth. So moving on from there, I think clearly we've got a young demography in the country, and India's labor force, about 12% is in manufacturing. That's quite paltry. In fact, many of you may have seen either the WhatsApp forward messages or read the article of Rajiv Bajaj, who talked about how, people from campus would go off to the software companies, go on to do work which wasn't really engineering in any way, and manufacturing, which is hardcore engineering led, or to a great extent does not find the kind of talent that people are looking for. But it's for us to change that. The more we are able to create jobs of those kinds and draw people in, including our own generation, next generations, etc., I think that's really where that will go. But it is said that while other countries are around 28 to 35% of people are engaged in manufacturing, even if India comes to about 15 to 18%, at 18%, we would be creating 500 million new jobs. So that's how big that opportunity is. We've also got production-linked incentives that the government has started to come up with, because until now, on a lot of subsidies and other support government was providing to industry and in general, there was always a WTO watch to say, is this kosher, is this right, is this allowable? But when it comes to production-led incentives, there is absolutely no debate. So this is something we need to take advantage of. And what does that really imply? There are a couple of industries, bulk drugs, for example, medical devices, mobile phones, electronics. These were started by the government, where they said in 2020, this was to say there will be incentives on greater production, productivity measures that businesses are able to take. And that would be to the tune of 500 billion Indian rupees. And now we've had 10 more industries and subject areas that have been added, and this will keep expanding. That brings an additional 1,460 billion rupees worth of support that is coming in over there. Now, support or no support, I think this is talking about being more productive, creating more productivity-led indices in our businesses, and being able to harness that for ourselves. So that's something that really needs to be a focus going forward. So there's a very standard traditional way that we have looked at manufacturing. And we've always looked at it and saying that it's either a family business where I have come in and I'm continuing the same business. These are the machines I inherited. This is the distribution system. This is the product I inherited, and I'm doing that. Some of us go into newer lines of business and we say, this is not really, got too much of a future. Let me try something else. There are also first generation entrepreneurs who come into manufacturing. And the traditional way we look at that is to say, I'll need capital, I'll need land, I need plant machinery, labor, etc. And then when you move from there, I need sources of raw material and I need to look at a market who I can sell to. So who are going to be my buyers and how do I access them? That's the very standard traditional way. And I think we need to continue that. But there is more that I'm going to be recommending. And this is where we talk about saying, oh, it's my own brand, or I'm manufacturing for somebody else, or I'm manufacturing as an OEM for a larger manufacturer, and I'm a component provider, etc. That's really how traditionally it has been. But if we want to get into manufacturing excellence, and that's what will make us individually much larger, and therefore India, the global manufacturing hub, then we have to create manufacturing excellence. And this requires a holistic view. We cannot take a part view. We cannot take a traditional view alone of that. And please don't get me wrong, manufacturing processes, your labor, your plant and equipment, machinery, everything is required, but that's not all that will get you through. We need to have a new perspective of that. Now, these are devices some of us may have forgotten, but I wanted to just remind all of us that phones did exist that had keypads covering half the phone, and we had these screens which were quite large. Some of them became very, very innovative, and we could touch the screen and actually operate from there, but the keyboards were still there. And nobody really thought that there was anything wrong with this, right? The innovation came in whether I had a colored phone versus something, whether I had a keypad which sloped in this direction or the other. And those were the kinds of ways we were going around our business, all of us included, I would imagine, most of us at least. However, there was one person who decided that there was something different. And if we take that example into our manufacturing excellence drive, is there an opportunity for us to Appleize what we are doing? And what do we mean by Appleizing it, or becoming like Apple in this example? Because there was this one person who thought very differently even about the phone instrument. Just the way it appeared, the way it operated, its basic construct, even the entire model of the phone itself. And I would ask all of us in the room today, how many of us use the phone as a phone for what percentage of our time? It's still called a phone. I wonder why we still call it a phone, but it hardly is a phone anymore, because that's the least that I personally use the phone for in terms of accepting calls or making calls, but there is more things that we do with it. So how did that begin? Clearly, this individual and this company had a very strong design focus. I would ask in our room today, anybody who's in manufacturing, how many of us are engaging a product designer in our manufacturing units? And if there is nobody who's designing the product, we are likely to keep making the same product we've been making for the longest period of time. How do we build scale? How do we build globality? How do we build the kind of infrastructure that is required, the kind of market we are trying to address? So I think a very, very strong requirement for us to think about having design professionals, and they could be part-time, they could be consultants, they could be anything. We don't need to take overheads necessarily too early in life, but there is no reason for us to not think of design if we are in manufacturing. What about user experiences? how do we try and how obsessive are we? In my days in Tokyo, when I was with Citi, in my cards business over there, my growth was propelled on the basis of a partnership I had with Amazon. And I have to tell you, the few months that I spent with that team from Amazon trying to develop a combined product, the amount of obsession of every single team member on Amazon for customer experience. Why is this form this long? Why do you ask this question? Can it be asked any differently? They tried everything under the sun till the time they would finally agree to whatever was being put forth. But there is a complete obsession that certain companies who actually make it big have on customer experience. And even in an industrial product or a consumer product that you are manufacturing, that you are a part of, these are very, very relevant and can be asked of ourselves. What about our partnership ecosystem? Are we doing this on our own, or are we leveraging strong partnerships? And this goes in every area. We talked about the forward and backward integration, but it goes in other directions as well. And what about servicing excellence? How well are we creating the infrastructure or the culture? And what kind of goals have we got for ourselves? Let's get a little specific, since we talked about Apple in that context, because it is being used more as a term for us to be inspired by. And what is it that comes in the form of a strong design focus? How many of us had ever thought of a mobile phone as a fashion accessory? Today, it has come to become a fashion accessory because most people will want to know what model you're carrying of what device or what phone and what cover is on it, etc. So from being a very, very functional product or a gadget, today it has gone as far as that. And you can see what it has done, not just to one brand, but to every brand when it comes to the presentation of the mobile phone, which was otherwise a very functional unit. A superior user experience. What do we mean by this? The first time most of us got an iPhone, was this the question we asked? To say, where is the user manual? And there was absolutely no user manual. They've never had the concept of a user manual, and today no phone comes with a user manual. And the reason for that, it is so simple to operate. The complexity lies behind the curtain. It's very simple. You know which button has to be hit for what. I mean, we remember the time when you would take a picture and the first thing your phone would ask you is, do you want to save this picture or do you want to send it to somebody? The moment you said you wanted to send it to somebody, it would say, is the person in your phone book? And you say, no, he's not on the phone book or she's not on the phone book. Okay, enter the details. Now that you've entered the details, shall I add them to the phone book? How was the machine already knowing that we want to do these things? That's the level of obsession that went into the user experience. And it applies to all things that we are engaged in, because it's not just the physical product that the customer deals in. The partner ecosystem. Many people talk about the success of mobile phones today, and the Apple phone in particular was around the ecosystem, because like I said, we use the phone less. I can even scan documents today on using my phone, and all of us do that. And that's because of the concept of the App Store. And what is the App Store? It's really a collaboration with completely unknown people, and yet we are able to add value to our product, in this case the phone, to have more utility on it so that it becomes an inseparable device to that extent. So that's the kind of thinking we will require. In service excellence, who had ever thought that if you wanted to get your phone repaired, you would actually be sitting on a bar stool like place on a high table, probably sipping a cup of coffee and sitting at something called the Genius Bar and getting your phone serviced. Now, these are concepts and ideas which are not the manifestation of what has come out, but it's really the thinking that preceded it that one needs to credit. And that's what we need to inculcate or bring into our own individual units. And how do we go forward? So if we were looking at a blank slate and we were looking at the tomorrow or the day after from where we are sitting today, we need to look at what's happening in the world around us. Let's just take automotives, for example. Now, I don't think anybody in this room is not aware what is the future of automotive. We all know that it's going to be electrical vehicles and it's going to be driverless cars or driverless vehicles, really, to that extent. Now, if that is happening, what are we seeing as possible trends? Not many of us are going to go into auto manufacturing of driverless vehicles or even electric vehicles. Some of us may, and why not? But let's assume we are not doing that. Are there still any opportunities that we could be looking at? What are the kind of accessories that will be required? What will happen to charging stations? Who's going to make them? Where will they be located? What kind of preparatory work is required for a charging station if I'm not in the business of creating a charging station, but I might want to prepare the real estate for that and what all is required for that. What about compatible devices? What will be required at that point in time so that I can move forward? And what kind of scale can I think of? And then we start bringing in the strong design focus, the superior user experience, the partner ecosystem that's required, and the servicing excellence. Once we start thinking of all of that, are there new lines of business? Are there existing lines of business we can pivot our businesses into? What should we really be looking at? And we have to discover in our own domains, what is that answer? What is the question? What are those opportunities before us? Moving into another area, I think we all understand that when we look at our own homes, we look at how we do things today. They are very different from how we did them some years ago. And clearly, you're starting to see smaller homes. Fortunately, not so much in Kerala, but in many other parts of the country and the world. More working couples starting to happen. So what is this going to do to our lives? What is it that will come out of all of this, or has already started coming out, that presents an opportunity for us in terms of our business on the area of manufacturing is what I'm talking about over here. Is there going to be a need for a different kind of a storage bin? Are there locker rooms that will be required of a different kind, which will require different hardware to be over there? Is the furniture size going to get smaller? Are they going to get more functional, being able to do 3 things with 1 piece of furniture? Because I need to do that, a stool turning into a ladder for me to be able to access other areas, etc. And how do we start designing for all of that? Once again, strong design focus, user experience, the partner ecosystems, as well as the servicing excellence we need for all of this to come together. And I can tell you in Tokyo, for example, the time I lived over there, and it was a practice that I got to know when I was observing others. Most of the laundries over there would start accepting winter wear at a certain time, have them all cleared, stored, cleaned, etc. And when winter would begin, literally 2 days before winter would begin, every home would get their winter wear delivered to them. Nobody had winter wear in their own homes because the homes were that small. And so therefore, what kind of a support industry that may have called for, what kind of products that may have called for, one can only imagine what that would be like. Is that the kind of area we need to look at to present the kind of opportunities so that we can become a significant hub? I spoke earlier about digitization, and this is something close to my own heart as well as something that we do in the business. Whether you're a consumer products company and a retailer, or a manufacturer of industrial products, or a consumer products brand owner, or even a services provider, we all need digital presence. We need them for different reasons. We are looking for consumers in some cases. We are looking for an end buyer. We are looking for intermediaries. We're looking for raw materials, consumables, machinery, all of that. The more we are digitized, the more we are accessing information that is relevant to us, the better you will be able to make better informed decisions. And today, like we said, there are partners that are available that allow you to be able to ship your samples, to be able to ship your machinery, and all of that can be done digitally. And there is a whole host of solutions, right from free solutions to pay as you go kind of services that are available. Trade bodies, and including the KMA, I'm sure it's only a matter of time that you will start seeing the trade bodies actually taking greater interest in the memberships businesses. And I think this talk and other conversations that you all are having is a clear example and evidence of how the KMA is looking forward and saying, let's gear our members better. And in doing that, here's an example of how the Federation of Indian Exports Organization is building an exporters mall. Now, they're doing it on Global Linker, or a solution provided by us. That's incidental, but you're not saying to your exporters that we will talk policy with the government, we will talk tariff with the government, etc. They're going one step further and saying, we'll help you exporters make it a little better and bigger, and let's bring you all together and try and find people with import interests to come into one place and be able to buy your products from you. You need to showcase them appropriately with individual stores, with individual products. So that's the changing role that you will start seeing more of. And the more you are digitized, the more you can participate in these sorts of events. Now, we talked about small and medium enterprises, and this is one of our very, very strong beliefs. We refer to them as small and medium, but I can tell you their dreams are never small or medium. Anybody in this room who's got small dreams or medium-sized dreams, we've all got big dreams for our business. And if you look at that, the reason why we are small, maybe we lack economies of scale, maybe we lack resources to be able to digitize our operations, to be able to think outside of the areas that we work in. And we have to remember that every enterprise of today was an SME at some point in time. But what separated them from the others who continue to remain SMEs was the mindset, was the thinking, and the opportunity for them to look forward. And that really is what makes the difference between the ones. Of course, there is some luck and there is some other elements that come. I'm not discounting that, but that alone is not the reason somebody is bigger than the other, or more, or the other are more modest, I should say. And digitization has helped level the playing field because of shared infrastructure, services. All of that really makes for it. And it's more of a mindset change. I think we've said this before. The complexity lies behind the curtain. Solutions are more do it yourself. And what you need to do as a business when you do that is be able to create your catalogs, your websites, which are available, create digitized supply chain solutions. How are you procuring raw materials? How are you delivering finished goods? How are you receiving your payments? All of that is extremely important. And then, of course, with trade bodies, etc., coming in and doing that. And our own vision is really powering digital commerce for SMEs, because this is an important role that would be played. I don't want to make this about the solution, but what we're doing is to make this global. And as we have more and more countries where we have the presence and we are encouraging more small businesses to digitize, that lends itself that much better. We have programs, like I said, with corporations, trade bodies, and governments to engage and empower their SMEs members and move forward from that. So really, I think if I had to sum this up in a sense, this is all about our mindset. It is all about us looking at a unit level to say, what can we do best for our business, for our manufacturing setup? And if every SME did this at their own level, there's no reason why we would not become, as India, the global manufacturing hub sooner rather than the time it will otherwise take us. India is getting there. I think all of us need to ask ourselves the question, have we boarded that bus or are we watching from the sidelines? I would encourage all of you to board that bus. So thank you very much. That's really what I had from my end, and happy to take on further discussions or questions.
That was a fantastic presentation. Though you have combined a lot of information into that and you have been able to deliver it in about 35 minutes time. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Vakil. In fact, it not only contained a lot of data, but also contained a lot of inspiration and motivational things as well, and giving directions. Okay. We sit in very far from places like Mumbai, Delhi, etc. That's where the happening places. We call ourselves God's own country and we all sleep here actually. So lots of input that actually you gave are probably some of the people here may not have even thought of, but then fantastic ideas that you had given to us. And I'm so happy to hear that by 2030, your organization will become, you intend to, or before that, you intend to become one of the most valued global company, and your motto is powering digital commerce for SMEs. Great. Okay. Now, I'll start with a question on this. See, I'm just telling you culturally, okay, we have a major challenge. We are a Chalta Hai country. You understand that? We are a Chalta Hai country, and you understand it much better than anybody else because you're in Mumbai. Okay. Now, the second element is, for everything, we have a jugaad. Okay. And jugaad doesn't get accepted in the global part. If you have a jugaad, you will never make an Apple phone.
Sure.
If you have a jugaad, you will never make an electric vehicle as well, So this jugaad and Chalta Hai combined together, is it not actually really and we take a lot of pride in doing this jugaad, of course, then isn't it actually not allowing us to, generally go well and go into very high level of standardized and high level market?
Right. No, and I think that's a great question, and I want to I always try and dip into history to look forward. It's always a great way of doing that. But I think we will remember in the 70s and thereabouts or 80s, we've all heard the terms around Kaizen and constant improvement, or it was standardized processes. You saw the Six Sigma processes and all of that come in, and it's a question of adopting all of that. So firstly, I think we are Indian, and I think we're all extremely proud of that. Jugaad is a culture, but when Jugaad becomes a culture of getting by, that's where it becomes dangerous. If Jugaad is a way of fixing things, it's not a bad thing, but that fix needs to then be operationalized, process-oriented, needs to be created, needs to be documented, and thereby made a way of life. Nothing wrong with that, because that's where innovation really comes from. But if that innovation is used for us as an alibi, you tried calling me, maybe my phone was on silent, or I didn't hear your phone, etc., or you couldn't connect to me, or I couldn't connect back to you. Those are excuses. I think those are the things we need to be staying away from. So I think coming to a more definitive response, Mr. Nair, to the question that you've asked, I think if every individual and every organization takes their own business seriously, and the reason they need to take that is because we are at a cusp. In my view, and there is no research to be able to establish what I'm saying, but please look back in time and you will see every 20, 30, 40 years, there is an opportunity for a complete revision of industries to happen. And I don't think any of us would doubt that COVID has given us that opportunity. It is for us to look at that in this pandemic and look at the world with a completely new pair of eyes. If we don't have that discipline, we could be those ones standing at the bus station, looking at the bus passing us by, rather than having boarded it. Now, if you want to board it, then you have to think in a certain way to say, where do I see the next 10, 20, 30 years for my business? What is it that I would like to create? What is the legacy I want to create, and how do I do that? And within that, if you don't have funds and you found a clever way of doing it, that is what I would call, it's like hacking, right? I mean, you have ethical hacking and you have the other kind of hacking. There is nothing wrong with ethical hacking. We all need ethical hacking. So if you can come up with legitimate jugaad, great, but don't rely on that to propel your business forever unless you institutionalize it. So that would be the point I would make on that.
Thank you very much. Somewhere in the middle, you just made a statement telling that if the manufacturing goes to 18%, it can give job for about 500 million people. Will you just elaborate upon that, please?
Sure. So I think the manufacturing sector and its current employment as well as contribution is clearly an indicator of that. And it is said that if, and again, we can talk about it at a macro level, but finally, when we think about it, it's really, in our case, it boils down to our units. If we are looking at a manufacturing capacity of, let's say, 1,000 units, and instead we said that now I want to get into a different league and I want to see how I can do 10,000 units or 100,000 units. What does it do to my unit cost? What does it do in terms of my output and my sales machinery that I require for that? And with that kind of sales machinery that I have, or that kind of production capacity, I will definitely go into a much higher level of automation, and therefore my error margins or rates will start coming down, my rejects will come down, my quality will improve. So all your parameters start working in the right direction. And finally, to produce from 1,000 units to 100,000 units, I'm not going to increase my labor force by 100 times. It probably will grow 10 times, 20 times at best, because there will be a lot of automation.
Yeah.
But that 10 or 20% times increase that I've had is really what is going to propel from that 12 to 18% what will mean in terms of the number of people who get engaged in manufacturing. Now, when you do that at a unit level and you're only thinking about your line of production, if you think of the raw materials that you require and what will happen to those people downstream, the additional packaging, and what will your packaging partner require to do to up their quantity, that whole impact that you have becomes a snowball effect. And that's what is talking about the number of jobs. And those are the kinds of jobs this country requires, given our youth population and the way they are getting out of the educational institutes. You don't want a situation where people do not have jobs when this manufacturing sector of ours is capable of producing those jobs, limited only by our own vision and our own enthusiasm for our own businesses.
Thank you. See, we somehow, by the turn of the century from last to this, have been able to generally catch the IT bus that the Indians I'm seeing, and therefore the software aspect has been able to help us a lot. But when it comes to things like product market, product development, product engineering, and the mindset related to that, I think the country is seriously lacking. What could be done to improve upon that? And is there a specific education, both theoretical and practical, available in the country, or are we actually on the cusp of something big in terms of creating a product development mindset?
Yeah, no, I think this again goes back to some of our old adages where you talked about the king having brought, asked people to fill a pool of milk, and everybody thought they would get away with a glass of water. Now, I think if everybody takes their own pieces seriously. And that's why we didn't talk about the manufacturing sector and the hub that we want to make India at a macro level. We talked about it at a micro level. So if each of us does what is right, the larger picture will get sorted out. But let me address your point a little differently, if you would. In the 60s and 70s, we know that we exported a lot of labor out of India.
Yes.
Right. But those people went into coffee plantations, into rubber plantations,
sugarcane plantations.
Yeah, and they laid the railway lines for various countries in the Far East and so on and so forth. That's the kind of people we exported. When we came into the 70s, etc., we started exporting people once again, but they were mechanics who would go into the Middle East. There were people who would, go as janitors in the UK and other such places. So that's the kind of people we were exporting. When you came into the 90s, we started sending software engineers outside to do on-site work, right? That's where you would see Indians go and start, moving around on the computing side, etc.
Yes.
What happened when we came into the 2000s? That's the time when a lot of people, including myself, as middle managers or even senior managers in some cases, went overseas to start operating significant businesses, right? And when you're now coming to the 2010s and thereabouts, we are starting to see a reverse brain drain. A lot of people from overseas, once again, people like me, maybe I seem to have been on all sides of these buses, coming back into India to start ventures to take them global. So I think this is a cycle that happens with time. We have consumed far too many good quality products and appreciated them as users for us not to be able to think as manufacturers, how can we outdo this? So I think just the way in the labor market, if you saw from sending people to lay railroad outside and work in coffee plantations, if we can start exporting CEOs, India has in 2000 and 2010 onwards been exporting global CEOs.
Indeed.
People who have worked in India, educated in India, lived all of their lives in India, have gone on to head corporations. And Ajay Banga is a classic example of that. Right? So this is what we are able to do as a country. No reason why we can't create world-class products. The question is that if each of us thought of that as a business opportunity, and we do not get laid back about it, if we don't believe that I've got enough to take care of, because I think this is all about our performance versus our potential. If you are capable of 100 and you're producing 100, then you're doing all right. But if you're capable of 1,000 and producing 100, we have to ask ourselves. And it's not about monetary returns. It's not about that. It's about doing and challenging yourself for what you are capable of doing. And that's why I said those 4 pointers that we had was for that reason, that if we can keep those 4 pointers and more and adapt them as suitable to your business, but ask ourselves that no reason why we should be satisfied with less when we are capable of more.
Great. I have a specific question, specific to Kerala. I mean, if you could kindly give us some view on that. We have this lot of we call them Malus. Okay, we have moved into Middle East and we have close to about 33 million Malayalis in the Middle East. And due to major problem that is happening across in GCC nations, lots of them have come back. I think as per the records, we have close to about 200,000 people who had come back. Okay, now there are more coming back. And also the problem with GCC nation is that you have no continuity there. If somebody goes to America, he'll settle down there, but this guy has to come back. One of these days he has to come back. So if you take them into account, is there anything that we can do with them? Because all these people are used to some of the best products, best services, best gadgets, etc. If it comes back, is there anything that we can do with them, Mr. Vakil?
Sure. No, I think clearly, and first of all, you're right. I think the GCC countries are seen as transitionary. We go and add value over there, both to themselves, us and our families when we come back. But I think number one, these are very evolved consumers, first of all. Evolved consumers are also those who then can, start expecting or passing the knowledge of what they have experienced over there. Yeah. And the other is they have market connects back in the right places as well. Yeah. So I think if there is a way for us to create that, but even before we get into that, Ms. Nair, if you're okay, I did want to suggest one of the things that we can all do. Yeah. And, while you talked about Malus, you talked about Kerala. From the outside, we see it as the most literate state. We see it as one with great amount of cleanliness, hygiene, good sense of ethics and everything else as well. So given all of that, I think if we can start thinking more in a collaborative terms, we don't have to wait for government. We don't have to wait for policy and other such things. But if between us we felt that there are certain advantages our state offers us. And these returning expats, if I can call them, would be one segment of that. But that's not the only thing we have. I don't want to be constrained by that.
Yeah.
Somehow that can be brought into the equation. But
Yes.
I think if we can create a collaborative process of taking a big piece of a puzzle and breaking it into smaller components that we can all cluster around and develop, there's no reason why we can't, even, and starting from the KMA members itself, I'm talking about, you don't have to go too far to doing that. I think there is a complete new wave that we can create. And that's really what we need to be looking at. Within that, I think these returning folks, first of all, people in India, we drive in a certain way. If you have been abroad and lived for those many years and come back, you start driving in a certain way. So it's not just the fact that they were from our origin or from our state when they went, but when they've come back with a different mindset. That process orientation that we talk about, the disciplined approach of following certain things, those are there. Now, how we take advantage of that in our manufacturing sectors, in our businesses, is really for us to be able to do. But I think there is a great value, number one, in collaboration, and number two, in leveraging the power of these returning expats that have come back. I think that's a huge opportunity for us to, because they're likely to be more process oriented than some of the others who will take a little longer, but will eventually get there as long as we instill that discipline.
Thank you very much. In fact, President Madhav had been really discussing with him. We have been really discussing a lot on what could we do to leverage. And I feel there is some opportunities for us to link up together, and we'll come back to you. Definitely, we'll come back to you. Madhav will speak to you about that while he sum it up. But let me come to a last question of the evening. See, we have recently seen one of those SMA companies in the country called Zomato going global or going IPO. You must have also seen it. You visited Mumbai. Probably you would have subscribed some shares as well. I believe the company's market capitalization now stands at about 100,000 crores. Okay. Now, at the point in time, it was 66,000 crore, and they went for about 9,000 crore. Or I suppose something like that. They wanted to take it from the market. Maybe less than 15% of the valuation is what they get into the market. I then next day morning read a newspaper, read a midly or a letter to editor, not a letter to editor, a center spread article by Captain Gopinath, who was the chairman of Deccan, or the founder and co-founder and chairman of Deccan Airways. Okay. And he said, this is atrocity. He said, this is bad. He was actually trying to say Zomato, which delivers, a hyper-local delivery guy who's valued at 100,000, okay, 1 lakh crore of rupees, whereas Jupiter Foodworks, which is actually the food maker as far as the pizza is concerned, Domino Pizza is concerned, his valuation doesn't even come to 1/20th of that actually. And there are some other examples as well. Okay, like for example, Byju's, which is valued at that way. Whereas you look at Manipal Group, who actually produced a Satya Nadella. Okay, if you really look at it. Okay, what is the valuation of Manipal Group as far as things are concerned? So he said it is atrocious. Now, what is this? What is this new economy trying to do? What is your take on that, Mr. Vakil?
Okay, so my philosophy is a little different. Maybe I'm a little old school in those senses. So I'll tell you what we need to do. I personally believe, and this is my personal belief, so I'll say it. We need to work on creating value and not valuation. Okay. Valuation is a byproduct of whatever you do.
Yes.
If Zomato has created value for restaurants that were unable to reach customers conveniently, and if that value has actually impacted the lives of several restaurateurs, and as a consequence, Zomato is valued at whatever, I think it is well earned and well deserved, or nobody has a right to question that part, right? But on the other side, if they have done it for valuation, I would almost like to ask and believe how long will it stay at where it is. But if we all, and this is the message I want to take from your question for all of us, since we talked about the subject today at a micro level, any organization that is doing the goal of whether it's manufacturing, creating an app, or doing something with an eye on valuation is more likely to trip, because they would have overlooked the things that need to be created for value. If you create value, the valuation will follow. Now, if that was true value, valuation will stay consistent. If it wasn't true value, then it may not remain consistent. It may last you for a period of time.
Yes.
I think the more we think about long term, we think about impact, and we think about it in terms of what we are doing And as a consequence, being at the right place, right time, I mean, luck always has a role to play, etc. But that notwithstanding, I think we can definitely credit them for a lot of things. Whether we credit them today for valuation, I think will have to be seen over a longer period to decide or to determine. But if we believe genuinely they've created value, let's ignore the valuation side because that is incidental. It's really the value that they've created. So I would focus on that, not just from the Zomato example, but many other startups and otherwise. But I think the most important message you would take is that the largest vehicle company in the world does not own a vehicle. The largest hotel chain does not own a hotel, etc. And that's when we started our discussion, we said, let's not be constrained by the traditional way. Right? I am not a Birla or a Tata. I was not born in that family. Sadly, I was born in a working class family, so I can never make it big. I think that is no excuse, no reason for size or scale or quality of operations. If you were fortunate to be in one of those lineages, that's good for you. But I think we know several examples, and I think Richard Branson said this the best when he was asked, how do you become a millionaire overnight? And he says the only way in this world you can become a millionaire overnight is to start with $1 billion. Right? But, and if you want to do it the right way and in a consistent way. So I think that's what our focus should be. And I'm sure the rest will follow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vakil. In fact, I have been doing a lot of this coordinations, and I must definitely rate this as one of the highest level of IQ that we have actually exemplified. And we have really thought through all these things. And over and above the intellectual quotient of this exercise that we have undergone in the last 1 hour, I also thank you for leaving that hope behind in all of our mind. That's very critical. You know, you really instilled a lot of hope in us. On that, I am sending you back to Mother. Mother, all yours.
Thank you so much, sir. You said it. I just made a kind of a statement in the beginning saying that we have an SME or SMB of the SME of the SME. You know,
right? Yes.
So he has proven that. It just came as a rhyming thing when I was just saying that. But he just proved that, as you rightly said, giving so much of hopes to all of us, not only to the small, medium business or enterprise. It is for everyone. There is some positivity. See, normally, as sir was saying, we, the MSMEs or the SMEs, as we call them, we all look to public sector and, the central government, state government schemes and policies and other things to bail us out of something, or rather get some incentives to make our business thrive, and not really look at that statement which you said about the networking is your net worth, that kind of a thing. People are actually not looking into that. In fact, we started off with this MSME forum, and we have this summit which we had conducted last month, and a series of workshops. Even there also, we were actually focusing on the central government schemes and policies, where somebody from the central government going to come and talk to them, then the state government person is going to talk to them, then the banking professionals, what all are offered, they're going to talk to them. Now we have the fourth slot coming in, where Mr. Samir Vakil has to come and talk to them about what exactly they got to do to really make that performance, against their capability, which is something which they are not actually seeing. It's in the gray area where they are, have got a set of ideas, and from there they don't actually think out of the box. I mean, that is where, the technology and all the learning which the global ecosystem is offering them, they got to connect with the whole world, and then only they can actually stand the test of times. So really a good one. It's as you just strayed from making manufacturing concerns out of SMEs, you went into creating value and valuations for Zomatos and others. It's actually a very, very useful session which we all had, and somebody said one of the best sessions which we had. I must say, you had very, very clear rather the clarity of your thoughts and the way in which you expressed was indeed perfect. I must say that, because whatever you said was straight driven into the minds, and we were very clear about it. There is no questions asked about it. Thank you so much, Mr. Samir Vakil. That was indeed exceptional
session. We could be looking at hosting him physically one of these days when things are better, isn't it?
Yeah, because anyway, we are having those 3 sessions. The 4th one, by that time, we hope the numbers can come down. I mean, the negative numbers becoming positive can come down, so that we can actually host you here and meet up with our MSME and SME people and the delegates, and then have a kind of interaction with them. In fact, and I was just mentioning to you about the MSME forum which we have. We have been thinking about having a kind of a portal where we can actually give them all kinds of help desk and all the data which is available from all the government sector, as well as what all things which we can give to handhold them. I'm sure you can add a lot of value with your global linger as well as on the personal level also. As you rightly said in between about the associations and the trade bodies coming in to help this kind of a situation. That is where I believe KMA can play a role, and I'm sure Global Linger and Samir Vakil also figure in that particular picture very prominently. Let us be in touch and let us definitely see more of each other in the coming days, and let us take the Kerala MSME, which is 12% of the Indian MSME segment, to make a mark. I mean, with the literacy and all other things which you said, the plus points which we have, I'm sure with a kind of dreaming which you can invoke in them, they can actually see the world outside that box and make it a big one, like any other global leader which can do. Thank you so much, Samir, and we look forward to seeing you. And before I hand it over to our Honorary Secretary, Mr. Jomon George, for the official vote of thanks, let me just make some announcements. We have the session 1 of the MSME workshop tomorrow, as I mentioned earlier, that is 27th July, tomorrow at 5:30. We have the chief guest for the event as Mr. APM Muhammad Hanish, IAS, the Principal Secretary of the Industries Department of Government of Kerala. And the workshop is going to be handled by Mr. G.S. Prakash, the Joint Director, MSME, the Ministry of MSME, Government of India. This workshop is meant to give you insights and explanations of the central government schemes and policies to help MSMEs. The program will be of immense help to the entrepreneurs and the MSME segment as such, as also for those who are planning to take up entrepreneurship. So no registration fee from KMA, just register yourself, first come first served, limited numbers can be taken in as delegates. That's tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. You can see the KMA website as well as the flyers coming to you to register yourself. And we have a new series of discussions starting this week from the CEO Forum at KMA. The CEO Forum usually do 1 or 2 CEO conclaves. For your information, Mr. Samir Vakil and others who are new to this, we have the CEO Forum where we do CEO conclave, where we have 35 to 40 CEOs coming in and listening to one of the most successful CEOs from across the world coming in addressing them. But now with this physical limitations of meeting each other, we are actually having a series of CEO meets, in the sense it's titled as Rendezvous with the CEO, where we're featuring highly successful CEOs of the public and private sector enterprises in conversation with a managing committee member and chairman of the KMA CEO Forum, the former executive director of BPCL Kochi Refineries and the current CEO and executive director of Nayara Refineries at Gujarat, Mr. Prasad K. Panikkar. The first of the series of Rendezvous with the CEO will be with the chairman and managing director of FACT Limited, our own pride, Mr. Kishore Rungta, which is on Thursday, 29th at 6 p.m. Please do not miss it when Mr. Rungta will share insights into his ongoing successful tenure at FACT, which turned around the limping public sector company, surpass its targets, and could showcase the highest financial performance of the company in the recent years. So this will be the first edition of the Rendezvous with Mr. Kishore Rungta on 29th July at 6 p.m. Also, please note that we have the 38th annual competition for the V-Star KMA Young Managers 2021 being open now. The last date for receiving nominations is 31st of July. Please visit the KMA website to get more details or contact the Secretariat. Get your performing managers or those young managers present here. Please see if you stand a chance to compete with your peers and win the coveted award from KMA, the Young Managers Award, powered by V-Star this time, the V-Star KMA Young Manager Award. So, please stay tuned to our announcements and notices, which is coming on WhatsApp, email, SMS, everywhere. So please be in touch with KMA. Now it's over to the Secretary, Mr. Jomon George, Chartered Accountant, for the vote of thanks. Over to you, Jomon.
Thank you. Good evening to all of you. President KMA Madhav Chandran. Program Committee Chair S.R. Nair, the real global link, 50 plus of the participants for this program on MSMEs in India, making it a global center. And wonderful presentation. I joined in a little late, but I could really get the imbibe the spirit of the presentation. The first thing was to have the confidence. MSMEs should have the much required confidence in the innate potential, and then blossoming that forth with the capabilities and possibilities of technology, digital, and many times it was said that your network is your net worth. So digitization is the key, and you in your professional capacity has been linking many of the MSMEs across the globe. And this connect is very, very important. And at KMA, we got a completely new perspective. And that comes from your rich experience of the past, your global experience. It's good that people having that kind of experience come back to India and then work for MSMEs here, reaching them the full potential, connecting them to a larger world existence. So that was really wonderful and answered all the questions which SR raised and very focused answer on the returning NRIs, concern on them, they're becoming a collective and using the expected or rather their experiences in the enhanced experiences in various parts, particularly in the Middle East, to make businesses gain a new strength and new direction. So that's really, really, really wonderful. And on the Zomato IPO, a lot of discussions. Your take is that valuation and value are different. And C. Rangarajan recently wrote an article incidentally about the IPOs getting roaring successes in a market frenzy, which may not be lasting. So that's something which I thought I just add to. While we all, behalf of all of us here, the President, Program Committee, entire Managing Committee, profoundly thank you for sparing your valuable time, answering all our questions. And as Madhav said, post-COVID, and this has become a fitting prelude to the series of MSME empowerment programs we are planning, starting with tomorrow on the central government schemes, state government schemes, and banking incentives, and so on. So thank you so much from every one of us here. We had a real effective memento that you in session, which would be displayed now and sent across to you physically in a couple of days from now. So
Thank
this
you
proof that you have been at KMA this evening and you in action.
Appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Expecting more of support.
Yeah. No, it's been wonderful being with all of you today. So thank you very much. I just, it's very unusual for me to say something after the vote of thanks has been said, but I think the comments were very important. I had
I'm not done, sir. I'm not done. You still have time.
That's excellent. Excellent. Then I'll take a minute in that case, just half a minute. I just had either the pleasure or otherwise of being seated next to the late Arshad Mehta on a flight. And it was one of those days when I was young and I was already the CEO of a company. He asked for my card and he looked at it. And the comment that he made at the end is very important in the overall context of everything we discussed today. He said, it is people like you who manage performance, and it is people like me who manage perception. And the valuation of your organization is a combination of both of these. And I said to him in the end, I said, you please work on perception however you like. I am very happy working on performance, and that's where I want to stay. So I think on everything we talked about, it's all about perception and performance. I think if all of us focus on performance, the perception will get created at the right time, in the right way. But thank you for that. Back to you.
Well said. You are still young. You said you were younger in those days. You're still young. Keep going, and KMA would need more support from you. So once again, a big thank you from all of us here. Thank you to the Secretariat for the technology and making the event happen. Yes, sir, as usual, the focus questions and kept the session very, very live and active. And also to our sponsors, Medivision, Heal, Sarah, and all the team who are supporting us. So stay tuned to all the activities. President has given a list of upcoming events. So please stay tuned. And we endeavor to bring value in these difficult times, relentlessly working to reach out to the members and also our management students. Have a great evening. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamon, and thank you, Mr. Samir Vakil, once again. It was a wonderful session, and we look forward to meeting you again. Thank you, Algiers, for this great